This is a short chat about week 3 portion of Patrick Lecture 187, which is how to handle alternation of expansive and contractive states. And that's the title of this particular section, how to. When I do meetings, what I have learned to do over the years is to start where I am. And sometimes that can be instructive and relate to the lecture at hand or the section of the lecture at hand. This morning was the last week meeting of the week, and we had computer stuff, technology stuff. So that by the time I was all set, the way I approached the lecture was from how I calmed myself down from being scared, upset. My pride was hurt that I couldn't control my electronic equipment, that I had reset it wrong. You know, all the expansion, contraction, wanting to teach, being frustrated, contracting, all the back and forth and sideways that those first few minutes had left, the state that I had been left in those first few minutes. And that I needed to calm myself down and bring myself together, which is what this section is about. So that by being where I was able to do a live in the moment demo of what the principles are. So I want to go over a few things, and then I'll go to the how-to section, which was in the lecture. I had to really drag it out sentence by sentence. It was buried in text. I find this very common in the lectures. You have to read it carefully to get the message. The first point that the guide chose to make that I corralled into this section is that feelings are not facts. Now, if they've been devalued a lot and you want to elevate them in their priorities, that's great, but they're not facts. They are feelings. And that is an informational system, very similar to your senses, all your other senses. It's similar to your intuitive sense. It's similar to your mind, your self-will, all of this. And because it is information, it needs to be interpreted. And in the interpretation is where we can go sideways. And well, why would we misinterpret? Because our self-will, our agenda, the forcing currents inside us that we have put into play to keep us successful and liked and admired, and to keep our job and to keep our status in the society, to keep our idealized self-image going. All these forces that we've put into motion may have agendas that don't include vulnerability. They don't include sadness at one moment. You're not supposed to be sad. This is a happy time. It's driven by there being an agenda, a should, a preconceived notion of how we should feel at given times and moments. Feelings don't tend to listen to these. They tend to go where they want to go. And they contain information in those wayward movements. And the information can be ours if we interpret gently, softly, if we not interrogate, but if we explore our feelings with a sense of curiosity rather than judgment. Why are you sad? Where is the sadness coming from? Instead of, why are you sad? Where is this coming from? Because it needs to be fixed and I need to find out where it went wrong. So feelings are vulnerable to the forcing currents of our self-will, and they are easily misinterpreted if we already have an agenda. Part of pathwork is uncovering unconscious agendas that we don't realize we have, but that are operational. So that we want to engage with feelings without making them the penultimate judge, jury, and executioner of all that is right or all that is going on. So I can feel one way, and then I'm invited to look at reality, use my senses, use my mind, use my capacity to perceive, to say, is this real? and then come back and forth and manage all these items, find the discrepancies, and decide which way to go forward, how to go forward. So in that sense, it's asking me to take responsibility for the decisions I make rather than being a slave to or mandated by any one sense of mine. So the mind should not be deciding everything I do. Feelings should not be dictating everything, every action I take because of the feelings. My self-will should not be dictating that these are a system, and there's a center in that system, a place of me. And I get to decide how to interpret, how to act upon, how to deal with these forces. So, if you boil all that down, it's about self-responsibility, taking self-responsibility. It is also about the reality that painful experiences can be borne. We can. And what I invite people to do is, you may not see it in this context, but it is available to you in other contexts. I've never known anyone who can't handle every single possible painful experience. I've known a lot of people who on a sensitive topic freak out. They can't seem to manage it. It sets them off. They go into reaction and fear. And what I advise is to look at your other resources. Look at the other places where you handle difficult feelings. What resources do you use there? Bring those into play here, gently and lovingly. Not to dictate to the feelings, not to tell them they shouldn't be there, but to support taking deep breaths, taking a look around, allow the mind to help and support the reality that the feelings may be presenting, or to take apart an unreality that they may be representing. So we avoid painful experiences intuitively, instinctively, and that's not a bad thing. But when we avoid them and we don't take the information, we're also losing that information. A painful experience, for instance, could be a place where our feelings are hurt because the other person isn't meeting our expectations. The information is those were expectations of ours and that we were projecting them onto the other person, and we do not dictate what they do with that expectation. So the discrepancy, the painful adjustment that we have to make is that we need to accept reality. The other person is not governed by us. And we need to realize where we're trying to govern the situation. We're trying to push. There's a forcing current there. So again, this is into self-responsibility. Now, in the how-to, it's not always apparent. Like I say, I had to dig deep in the lectures to get these. And I'm going to list them. I don't normally like listing things, but I'm going to list them because here they are. And what the guide is suggesting in terms of how to handle these alternating expansion and contraction phases is you can look at your negations without hiding. These are not daggers. These are not tigers. They're just painful experiences or negations of your self-will, or your expectations, or your desires, or your visions. Well, a vision may not be grounded in reality, and it needs to be negated to some extent. So you can look at them without hiding. You can acknowledge them. You can observe your negative attitudes and see their deeper meaning, their significance. You can also observe the cramping up contraction and become intensely aware of this state of your being. And that's what I've been recommending in the other two videos is use your body, use the pulling back, notice where you contract and see it. When you listen to the numbness, to this fear of, this refusal to engage with the feelings, to understand them, to investigate them, you will detect other painful feelings. They tend to, one hides another. So this is the genesis of the statement, it gets worse before it gets better. And that's scary. And you acknowledge that it's scary and continue to simply look and observe. What is going on? What do I see? What do I feel? And then the guide suggests that as you allow them to simmer on the surface, you institute the process of moving through them, of being able to bear them and see more clearly, to have more awareness of what they're about. So that when a painful feeling awakens in you, to welcome it. This is your life. It is your energy. It is your creative substance. And with that, a positive, benign circle will begin. I believe I said last week that a message like that can sound fantastical. If I look at it, it will go away. You have to try it. It's one of those, the phrase again is you have to be there. You have to do it, walk through it step by step, and you have to do it more than once. Because the first time we try out something like this, we're not going to be expert, and we may cut corners or we may not do it well, so that we may not come through it with a satisfactory experience. There are a lot of things in your life. I'm going to talk about resources now. There are a lot of things in your life that you have tried and it didn't work the first time. But if you wanted it done, if you believed there would be a positive result, you just kept trying, you didn't quit. And there are lots of stories about how majestic, how courageous, how wonderful people are when they simply say, I will not quit. I will not pull back. I believe in this. I'm going to keep doing it. It's going to work. And I'd like to suggest that when you attempt to work with some of these concepts, if you have a negative attitude about them, if you don't believe they're going to work, you won't be putting your whole heart into it. You won't be putting free flowing effort into it. You'll be going, ooh, does this work? No, that did not work. And that's how we create our own reality. It didn't work. We made it not work. So when you see a concept like this, it's not easy to work with it. Give it a chance. Try it once a day. Sit down at the end of the day and work through these ideas, which is what the daily review is suggesting. And see if you can notice any softening. It won't all flow away at once. Someone asked today, will that get rid of these painful experiences? And they're a little taken aback when I say, no. Life is full of painful experiences. The idea is that you can learn to live with them, just like we have learned to live with gravity. We have learned to live with hunger, our own hunger during the day. We've learned to deal with the cycle of having to wash ourselves. It will come eventually. For some people, it's once a day. For some people, it's once every 3 days. But most people come to the place where a wash would feel really good. Your own rhythm may be different from someone else's. Painful experiences come, you can work through them. They will last at different times. Some will be deep, some will be shallow. I like to work through small ones first, and then before you tackle the big ones, just so you can get some practice in doing it and then leaving it go and just noticing if that knot in yourself relaxed a little bit. So I'm going to close up with one example. In the last couple of months, I've been very fortunate to have some other people around me on Saturday night listen, and it didn't work out. Schedule conflicts. This weekend, I couldn't do that meeting. So now I'm doing it and I'm alone. Well, it's a different attitude. I don't feel as expansive. I don't feel as held. I don't feel that level of connection with the material. My mind has to work harder. My intuition isn't as strong all by myself sometimes as it is with other people. And so I feel like I'm in a mild state of contraction right now. What do you do about that? Admit it, work with it. I did a version of this a while ago, and I didn't even have to review it. I just threw it in the trash. I was trying too hard. I was trying to do the normal enthusiastic video, and it just didn't feel right. I was faking it. Better to just do what feels right, to lower the emotional temperature, to lower the energy level, and be with what I can do in the moment. That is an example of dealing with expectations, of adjusting based on reality. The reality is my energy is lower. It's later in the week. I don't have as many ideas coursing through my head. And so what I can present will be, I would like to say, flatter or not as bouncy or perhaps as interesting, although I do not know that. So again, you do what you can do, put it out, and look for feedback to see whether that's workable or whether some weeks I should just skip the video and let it go. So, Pathfic Lecture 187, how to handle alternation of expansive and contractive states. There are instructions in the study guide and in the lecture. I hope you read it, and thanks for listening.